Speed's coverage of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans is brought to you by Porsche. Porsche, there is no substitute. And by Valvoline. Test on the track, trust it on the road. Hi, everybody. Great to be with you. There's a look at the Audi pit. Greg Creamer joining David and Dorsey up here in the booth. And a good look there at the number 25 RML Lola.
About time you came to
a very
work.
Strong run.
Andy Wallace taking it onto the road.
Yes, old Andy, who's once again having a very busy season over in the U.S. and great to see him get an opportunity with a top front car here. And apparently this car just made a stop down in pit lane, and Chris Neville, you got some information on that for us.
That's right, Greg. Andy Wallace had just brought the 25 machine to pit lane, currently leading P2. These are our defending champions from last year. Now, word is that they are having some boost pressure problems with the car. This was just a routine stop. They did pull some data from the car that they're going to take a look at. However, the team is leading. There already are other problems within the P2 category. We've seen the Intersport team have some issues here, so already some attrition in this category. Andy Wallace may have a couple issues in that 25 car.
Well, that's very interesting because the problem, as I understand it, with the Intersport car was possible wastegate, is what they're saying. Was they made a fix on the wastegate and that solved it, which could be, again, boost related. And Dorsey, you've talked earlier about the stresses that little engine has to go through, and it's boosted immensely.
Yeah,
to get through 24 hours.
Liz Halliday was reporting to us that that it was into an overboost situation. What happens, of course, it's regulated. The wastegate regulates how much pressure that the turbocharger can make. And when it goes into overboost, it goes into a fail-safe mode, and that's why it was shutting it down like that. So they've got that fixed, and that's good. Happy birthday, Greg.
Thank you, Dorsey.
Yes, absolutely. Talking about overboost. Back in the late 70s, I was driving that BMW four-cylinder turbocharged 320 turbocharged, and the wastegate stuck at your racetrack at Braden. And it went like hell down the straight, but only once.
Yeah, I bet it. Then the pistons were all laying around.
It gave 1,000 horsepower for about 15 seconds.
Yeah.
It was great.
Well, that car in upshifts, as I recall when you were driving it, didn't go straight a whole lot in a straight line, because when that turbo lag, when it finally came up on the boost, it was all over the place.
And lots of flames came out the side. It was really good fun to watch.
It's an interesting stat, and I don't know, I'll be honest, the specific numbers, but in that 8-yard, that little 2-liter turbo with the 4 cylinders, they're saying that with the boost they're running, the horsepower per cylinder was pretty much right on that of a Formula 1 V10 engine per cylinder. I mean, just immense power that little thing was making.
It probably is. There is old Andy Wallace, good head-on shot. He comes into the Indianapolis left-hand turn, a slight bank. The old guardrail used to be right up to the edge of the road there, down to Arnage. Always a big crowd down here. The village is just to your left.
Of course, that's a new car.
Normal every day. That's normally a crossroads when all that guardrail and that fence at the back is taken down. That's just an ordinary country crossroad. That.
It's a new team for Andy, but it's not really a new car. I mean, it's the same kind of car that the Dyson team back in the United States runs, and Andy's driven for many years.
Can't think of many people you'd rather have behind the wheel of your car in an endurance race than Andy Wallace.
Well, Andy Wallace ticked me off enormously because I was here in 1988. I think I was working for another TV network, and on the way home in the airplane, of course, sitting in front of me was the winner, Andy Wallace, who had just driven in his first Le Mans 24-hour race, which he won. And when I said, boy, you know, that was great, what's it feel like? And he said, well, that's what you're supposed to do, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to work.
Thank you very much. You're supposed to be doing that, but...
Got a pit stop here, and this is the Intersport, Lola, and it looks as though we are getting the drivers changed. Clint Field getting in. That's Duncan Dayton, who was hopping out of the car. And, of course, Duncan Dayton's Highcroft racing team, after Le Mans, is going to be back with, I believe, the rest of the season, running a very similar car to this as well at the remainder of the American Le Mans series. But Clint Field now behind the wheel.
Duncan Dayton, a very, very successful historic racer, drives a lot of historic cars, including a lot of Formula 1 cars, some of which are not that old, and he has now won more Formula 1 races at Monte Carlo than Ayrton Senna did.
That's a fun stat.
Good driver, old Duncan Dayton.
I've watched him run the 78 Lotus that Mario Andretti took to the World Championship at Road America. And I mean, the guy hustles those cars incredibly well. As you said, he drives Benettons and Ferraris, and actually at Road Atlanta during the Walter Mitty Historics a few years ago, he's driving the I believe it was the Reynard that Jacques Villeneuve won the kart championship with and won Indy that year, and he broke the outright track record at Road Atlanta pre-chicane. So just amazing. Here are some of the American drivers, as a matter of fact, talking about that are here, and as you can see, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, obviously led by Duncan Dayton in the 33 car with young Clintfield in there. He's only 22 years old. Liz Halliday also driving that car. John Macaluso, Andy Lally, a very accomplished driver. Johnny O'Connell in the Corvette. Chris McAllister, Bill Binney. Terry Borchella, another very, very successful driver. Tracy Cohn, his first time here. Van Overbeck. Patrick Long, a Porsche driver, of course, official factory driver. Gunnar Jeanette, famous father as well. Tom Milner, another famous father.
Gunnar Jeanette ought to upset you as well, because I was looking at his stat. He's something like 23 years old, and this is his 6th Le Mans. It's just unbelievable how young he got going now. At this stage of the race, certainly the Audi still having things going very well, running 1-2, but in the morning warm-up, Allan McNnish's hand went in the air, and at first people thought maybe they were just bringing him in just to check things over, but not the case. He had a bit of a problem, sent him back out, and even more smoke.
And that is not diesel smoke either. That's gearbox smoke.
Then, in the first hour of the race, right here, watch the number 20 Pillbeam come right across, split the two Audis, and then just about 7 minutes ago, a huge moment here. Watch the lockup. That is Capello. Got away from him, forced the other car right up over the curbing. That was the Vinny Motorsport Zytek. He was able to gather it up, but David, at that point, you noted he lost a lot of time vis-a-vis his margin over Werner.
Well, of course, the thing about those escapades where you leap over the curb, we've already saw what happened to the 007 Aston Martin. Went over the curb and punched a hole in the pan, the oil pan. I mean, anything can happen when you start leaping over the curb sideways like that. So what I said at the top of the show, you need a bit of luck, and you really do have to have a bit of luck. That could have gone horribly wrong there, and that was because he was forcing the pace past a lap car. Quite frankly, the Audi drivers don't need to be forcing no pace.
Now, 13-second lead went down to a 3-second lead, but I see now that he's forcing the pace again because he's back up to almost 5-second lead.
They are throwing down some awfully quick times early. Meanwhile, we understand big developments down in the Panoz pit. Andrew?
Yes, indeed, some very despondent faces down here. The 77 car, Gunnar Jeanette, currently at the wheel, has stopped out on the circuit. The team is still trying to assess what the problem is, but this looks pretty desperate from the boys from Brazelton. So I'll bring you some more news when I've found out.
Thanks, Andrew, and that's very bad news indeed. Of course, starting the season so well with the big win at Sebring, and have struggled a little bit since then, but nonetheless, we're looking for a good run here.
Well, it's down in 38th spot
Might have been
already.
I think that could have been it, limping along back there. They might have gotten it stopped for a while at one of the Marshall posts, but maybe they've got it limping back toward the pit. I'm not sure that was it, though.
Capello, after that bit of a moment, his little wiggle there as well, and that's one of the things that they've been dealing with here, the immense torque that these engines produce, and the traction control, although they may even have the technology for it, it's just tearing. And again, we've seen that before. And earlier in the race, we saw McNish almost go off the track on one of the sections as well. We're expecting him into the pits at this point.
Yeah, WR Peugeot was wandering down the road in a particularly fast pit. That's the rundown from Arnage to the Porsche curves. These cars are doing about 200 miles an hour, and cars like that Porsche should, that WR car, Peugeot rather, not WR.
That's one of our prototype
should
cars.
Not be in the way.
It's off the racetrack, and the corner workers from all over the world here doing a great job. They're pulling him back to a safe area and covering themselves with the yellow flag.
I almost wonder, is that the Advan?
That's this. I can't
See
tell.
the number. It is. It's the number 13 Advan car, which had qualified 5th. And everybody was anticipating that if that car, that they run the 4-liter Mugen, which is the reliability a little bit suspect there, and certainly in terms of a 24-hour race, but they said if it held together, the driver lineup and the speed it was showing certainly had potential. Here is Capello,
who pitted last on lap 29.
Saw a bit of gravel on that close-up shot there, already getting onto the track there up at the top of the Dunlop curve. That's the sort of thing that can catch you out badly. And of course, if you run over just a few bits of gravel on these tightly packed asphalt surfaces, it can easily cut a tire down.
And by the way, gentlemen, before we see what looks certainly to be an Audi pit stop, let's check in again with Andrew on the situation with Panoz.
I've got Don Panoz just joining me here. Don, can you... Don's shaking his head. He's very upset about this situation. The car has stopped at the Porsche curves. Gunnar Jeanette at the wheel. It's some fuel vapor problem. noticed it's a very hot day. So that seems to be the problem. So disappointment right here, and I don't think this car is going to go any further. Their 10th year here at Panoz. They gave Don, of course, the cake on Thursday, but I don't think he'll be having much to celebrate this weekend.
All right, thanks very much, Andrew. Obviously, if there's going to be a fix out there, Gunner's got to do it.
14 laps complete again, and this is the 15th. This is when the car stopped last time under green. Again, 2 laps further than the Pescarolo can go, and at a faster pace. That's a little bit bleak, as we heard Emmanuel Collard refer to it.
This is the Belger Racing entry, and we saw...
That's the guy.
Oh, dear.
My God, what's he doing?
Hey,
he's the guy that was wandering down the road in front of the Audi just a moment ago. Now he's spread all that gunge on the track.
Well, I saw just something happen really quick on the feed just a moment before we got the report from Andrew. So I think that may have happened, and maybe that's why he was going so slow. But he went from airplane to submarine, or tried to do, and a couple of corners there, and obviously he's done something to the car, and they brought him in.
He's got a left rear damage on the rear suspension. I saw when they dropped it. Take a look again at this. This is just pure ugly as he turns in.
I think this is... there's anything wrong with the car here. I think he just goofs up, gets it buried. Look at this, goes across there, up onto the curb, bang, onto the other curb, then buries the nose in the dirt. Whoa!
That could have been really bad right there.
Jeepers, and then comes out across the other side of the S-bend.
It looked to me like he was turning in incredibly early.
I do not know what's happened. Something go wrong with the car, I think.
You turn in early when you get that feeling you're about to die. You know, it's like if the brakes aren't working.
Well, I'm not sure whether Frederick Houchard is one of the 37 drivers who've never driven here before. And judging by that, it doesn't look like he's driven anywhere much before.
Well, that's a tough little car to take that kind of abuse.
It is very solid. Good look there at Marco Werner, sitting in the 2nd spot right now in the number 8 Audi R10 TDI.
The fuel mileage is amazing on these cars.
Stunning.
They're showing us, 15 lap runs. No one else has gone past 13.
Well, you saw the body language when Collard was being interviewed by Andrew. I mean, talk about...
dejected.
Looked like he was going to the old tumbrils.
Well, the last few laps even, these Audis have been running low 34s, low 35s, and the 2 Pescarolos have been running 39s and 41s. So, I mean, they're just seconds faster at this stage and going much longer on fuel. And now we see it is Werner who is bringing the number 8 down into pit lane for its stop.
Well,
and we are up in both of them. We also have Capello in as well.
At 2 laps a stint, you're going to pick up a couple of pit stops.
I would certainly think so. Let's get down to Brian Till.
Greg, the Audi's come down pit road. It is the 7 that makes it to his stop first. Capello in the car, shaking his head no for some reason, and made some kind of a motion like there was a vibration in the car. We'll have to take a look at that. They will replace the little windscreen that kicks the air up over the driver's head on Capello's car. Meanwhile, Werner comes in right behind him. Looks like routine stops on both of these cars. It'll be a full load of fuel. I see no tires being even laid out for the 7 nor for the 8. It looks like they'll double stint them. Should be routine stops. Capello should be back underway. He's won this thing twice. Will it be 3rd time a charm?
Interesting that they didn't opt to do tires on that 7 car after that big moment he had sliding across the grass and the curbs, and maybe that was the vibration, but maybe
that's
it cleaned
probably what he was
itself up.
saying. Don't change the tires. I would say is what he was saying, because they probably felt just fine to him. I'm sure the Michelin guys had to have a look at him now.
So Werner follows him out, and the 2 Audis once again back on track, and it appears as we take a look at our scoring monitor that they once again did not even give up the lead. We hop on board with the Corvette, and we'll be right back to the 24 hours of Le Mans. Welcome back, everybody, to the 74th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. As you can see by the welcome back, it is an event, a happening for many a party, and certainly probably the greatest race in the world, certainly the greatest sports car race in the world. And we've been watching some of the developments here, and we were watching, it appeared, the number 7 of Capello had a bit of a moment and made another run down pit lane. Brian?
Greg, the 7 just came back in. Dindo Capello behind the wheel. The only thing they adjusted was that small inch to inch and a half inch windscreen in front of him. There was a big rubber mark on the cowling right in front of it, like almost a ball of rubber had come up off the track and hit it. But as small as that is, it is a very, very important piece of the car. And Dorsey, I'm sure, can shed some light on that.
Yeah, actually, he's sitting so low in the car, Brian, that even though it's only an inch and a half tall, that rubber mark obscured his vision. He couldn't see through the windscreen, so they had to come in and take care of that. As we see, it looks like one of the Spykers is getting pushed into the behind the barrier down there.
And the number 16 Courage in the hands of Eric Comas is down in the pits as well, getting a pit some service, and that car comes in from 3rd overall at this point. Looks like he is going to stay on board, no driver change. And they have tires there, but I don't see them making any serious moves to bring them out.
Get 90 liters of fuel put in. He's done with that.
Well, a very, very smooth, quick stop, obviously, as we go on board with the Corvette. Speaking of on board the Corvette, we are going to be chatting with a driver who recently was on board and is now getting a well-deserved break. And he is down in the pits on one of our pit cameras, and that is Ollie Gavin. And Ollie, first of all, congratulations on an absolutely great run in the early going here. And the first thing I want to ask you at this stage is, we're looking at the pace, the best laps versus the consistent laps. And you guys seem to, even in the early going here, have the measure of the Aston Martins. You must be very happy.
Yeah, we are. It's going to plan. I mean, it was a fraught start. It was, for some reason, the P car that was just in front of me right at the start had a problem. And Darren, who was right in front of me in the Aston, got held up, and so I then went to the left, followed Pedro, sat behind Pedro for about 6 laps, and I was surprised with our straight line speed compared to them, because they have always been very strong here. So you know, it was nice to see. We had a good measured sort of first 6 or 7 laps, and then came in for a stop. The boys did a great job, got us out in front, and I think we ended up with about a 20-second lead by the end of that stint. So very pleased with the way that the pace is going, and also that the car seems to be running. It's hot. It's that the conditions were quite strange at times out there in that first hour and a half or so. It seemed that there was a lot of fluid going down, a lot of people dragging stuff back onto the track. So it was tricky at times, but handed the car over to Olivier. Olivier's kept the good work up, and the C6 is running fantastically.
By the way, just want to remind everybody, the video you're seeing to screen right of Ollie, you're on board with Max Papis in the 63 car. And wanted to also, it seems like this good start to the race started 2 weeks ago, because by all accounts, everything that I've heard from you and Johnny and everybody, that was the best pre-test you guys had ever had. And you came out of there, you said, with a great race setup, great tire setup. Been so much good things happening there that hadn't really evolved before.
Well, yeah, it was a very, very good test for us. It was the best we'd ever had. And we were hoping that we could be able to carry that on into the race week. But unfortunately, it rained about 10 minutes before the start of practice on the Wednesday. That washed out that whole test and practice session. And so then by the time we got through to the Thursday, the track had completely changed. So the setup that we had from the test was completely wrong. So we had to sort of go back again, start again, and find our way. But as always, all the engineers, all the boys in the team have done a fantastic job. And now we've got a pretty good race car. The track has come to us a little bit, we feel, but we've still got a little bit of work to do. Some minor little things we've got to adjust to get the things absolutely right. But we feel that we're in a good position. It's going to be flat-out racing for the next 21 hours or so. I think that the Aston's going to be right there. As long as both cars are reliable, I can't see that there's going to be any let-up in the pace. I think it's going to be full-on.
Ollie, the Corvette team came into this weekend. Everybody has made comment. The Aston guys have made comment. How completely relaxed it seems in your camp.
Well, in some ways it has been very relaxed, but in other ways it's been quite tense at times. It's been you know, sometimes there's been the odd little thing here and there has been a little bit of a niggle, but no, generally everybody feels very under control, and everybody seems to be, you know, quite relaxed and in control of things. You know, it's been a good couple of weeks for us.
Ollie, quick last question for you here. You mentioned the rain on Wednesday. There is now a forecast that includes some possible rain here as we get into late morning, early afternoon through the finish tomorrow. A lot of reports that this track was just diabolical with some of the paving that's been done in the wet. What do you look, what's your sense of that should it happen?
You just got to deal with it when it comes. I mean, you can't really do much with the car setup. You've got to set the car up for the dry, so you can't really have a special sort of thing that you do, because it's just going to take too long to try and adjust for the wet. When it comes, you just got to try and deal with it. Put the wet tyres on, maybe change a sway bar, maybe put a little bit of gurney on, maybe put a little bit more rear wing on. You've got to deal with the traction control. You can adjust that in the car, brake balance, all those sort of things, but you just have to deal with the pavement and the conditions as they happen. And that's part of the deal with the 24-hour race. You've just got to deal with it.
And multi-class racing and sports car racing and spray and visibility and all of that. It will be awfully interesting if it happens. Thanks so much for taking some time. Thanks. You've earned a bit of a rest. Go grab one and hydrate, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
All right, folks, that's Ollie Gavin. We really appreciate him stopping by. Here's a stat that I think really says everything about the success of Corvette racing at Le Mans over the past number of years. You notice only 1 year there where they didn't go 1-2.
Yeah, they've had an incredible year.
Amazing.
You know, we said they look pretty relaxed down there. There's a big team. There's a lot of them here. There's a big group, and they are really on top of things all the time. But obviously, one thing that also will affect them if it does rain later on in the race is the old windscreen by then will be getting a bit pitted and a bit messed up. They might have to change that to before they go out in the rain, because it'll be a terrible mess.
Absolutely. We'll have to keep track of that. And we are going to step away real quick. The number 64 Corvette currently 17 seconds ahead of the Aston Martin. Wednesday night on Speed. Don't miss. Pride, passion, and titles are all on the line in ultimate head-to-head quarter-mile matchups. The rules are simple. Lose the race, you lose your ride. Wednesday night, 9 Eastern, 8 Pacific, only on Speed. Welcome back, everybody. A good look here at the number 12. One of the Courage Mugen cars from Courage Competition is down in the pits, and we are seeing the number 73 Corvette, or 63 Corvette, sorry about that, make a run down into the pits, and you can see on the back corner, left rear corner, some damage there, and one of the Aston Martins following it in. There's that damage, and obviously one would have to suspect that came as a result of that spin that O'Connell had in the contact, but it looks like it may be getting worse. Well,
it certainly has come unglued big time. It did hit the guardrail. It was a fairly good thump, but it looked pretty unscathed at the time, but obviously it has come back to haunt them. And Max Papis is doing some really good sterling work. They pulled the car back up about 30 places, so he was going really, really well, but this is going to pull him back a bit.
Well, remember, they're going.
Well, looking at the back of the car, they've taped it up a lot, guys, but you can only tape so much at the speeds that they're going down these long straightaways. They will take this opportunity to do tires, fuel, and a driver change. You look at that damage right there. They take these large pieces of duct tape, put them together, and then try to tape them in a big Band-Aid type patch, but Band-Aids don't work at close to 200 miles an hour.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Brian. At 200 miles per hour, the Band-Aid does not work. They're going to have to get some rivets and some aluminum or something to give that some reinforced strength. But they're going to go with the Band-Aid. Of course, it'd be a lot easier to do this, to do a big repair if we got a caution.
Yeah, those are some massive pieces of very, very sticky vinyl now that they're going to try and do it with. But this is exactly the kind of thing that bites you at Le Mans. One problem builds to another problem and then builds to another problem.
Well, you can imagine the amount of pressure that's on that. 200 miles per hour is faster than single-engine aircraft can fly. So.
And of course, in that wheel arch area at the back there, tremendously disturbed there as well, sucking off the ground, and it gives you no leeway at all for touching any other.
I should say most single.
That's that new pit exit, which I must say.
Oh, the Ferrari is having a moment there.
Not 100% convinced it's a very good exit.
And there's the number 17 Pescarolo in the hands of the legend, the god here in France, Sébastien Loeb. So you can expect to be seeing a lot of him, and deservedly so. But we also want to welcome somebody to the booth, and it is the president and CEO of the American Le Mans Series, Scott Atherton. And great to see you here, making the trip to the other side of the pond, as it were. And once again, you've got to be pretty pleased with how teams that are contesting the American Le Mans Series are doing right here.
Well, they did great in qualifying. It's early hours yet, but so far so good.
This is the namesake series, obviously. What gave the American Le Mans Series its birth and its voice and its existence, and it has grown and done so much good stuff. And I mean, it's going to be tough to beat last year with the results that American Le Mans Series teams put up.
Yeah, it was. When you think of the 4 classes and the 3 podiums available in each class, I think we took home 8 or 9 out of 12. So not a bad year, including the first overall last year. That'd be a tough year to beat.
This, you mentioned it's early on right now in this race, but so far being here just through the event at this stage, what are you taking away from it at this point? What have you learned? What have you seen, or what surprised you even?
Well, you look at the reinvestment that the ACO has made in the facility here, and that's the first thing that strikes you. You know, the event seems to grow in size and stature every year. The perfect weather they've got here this year has got to bring a record crowd. I just came walking through the village, and it's standing room only everywhere you look. So I wish we could transplant every American Le Mans Series fan here just once, because they'd come away changed forever.
I would agree with that. This is a truly remarkable experience, and the fact that Don Panoz and the American Le Mans Series are trying to bring that to the States, and it has had a lot of success, really, I think, is spectacular. We're looking at the Essex entry that is down, and this is going to undergo a long stop. What are you hearing from any of the teams here that maybe aren't running in the American Le Mans Series right now that are interested? We've certainly heard lots of rumors. What have you heard that may be concrete?
Yeah, this is the time of year where there's a lot of inquiries being made. We have European teams that would like to come and run Petit Le Mans and potentially do both Petit and the finale at Laguna. We're always working to that end, and frankly, I'm looking forward to getting back to the States and getting back into the American Le Mans Series. You know, next up for us is Lime Rock.
Hang on one second. Let's get down to Brian Till, who's with the number 64 CompuWare pit stop.
Greg, this is your leader in the GT1 class. Olivier Beretta just got out. Jan Magnussen got in. Remember, this team has won this event the last 2 years. They'd love to make it 3 in a row for the 64 car. Magnussen, just magic behind the wheel of almost anything he drives. A routine stop. 4 new Michelin tires they'll take, driver change and fuel. Nothing awry here. Body work looks in good condition. Not a mark on the car, guys.
We watched these guys practice this pit stop, and the huge amount of fans that are here gave huge amounts of cheering and carrying on. They love watching these guys do those pit stops.
Well, they do a lot of practicing, and of course that's what you need for this to win these races, because they are so competitive now. There is just no quarter given. You can't give up. You can't slow down at all. And that 63 incident with the guardrail is obviously going to come back and haunt them big time as this race progresses.
Scott, getting back to what we were chatting about, obviously at the very next race at Lime Rock for the American Le Mans Series, it will still be the R8, but after that, we're expecting both of the R10 TDIs.
That's exactly right. So, you know, anybody wanting to see history being made will literally be the last running of the R8, and what an incredible career it's had. And then beginning at Salt Lake City, we'll have the 2 diesel Audis. Coming into the series at Lime Rock will be a second Ferrari 430 under Giuseppe Risi. I think you'll also see potentially one of the 2 Lexus GT2 entries. I think for sure we'll have both of them with us at Salt Lake, potentially one with us at Lime Rock. So some new content coming into the season literally at the midway point, and a lot happening for 2007.
A lot, as you pointed out, and one of those things we're hearing about is a tremendous development with Acura.
Yeah, got to be careful what you wish for here, you know, when you're Audi and Porsche as far as the competition goes. But expecting the minimum of 4 cars that'll debut with Sebring in 2007. I think they've selected both Courage and Lola chassis to begin with, and hopefully team announcements to be made in the near future.
Well, that's one of the big stories, is a lot of teams interested, and it's who do you whittle it down to, and there are some pretty solid teams that we understand are in the running. We've also, and again, it's rumors, but we've heard Creation is looking at maybe trying to put together a multi-car program for next year based on funding. I mean, that's always the story.
Exactly.
But one thing that is fact is the American Le Mans Series, in terms of a full season championship, is a lot of people want to be there.
No question about it. Yeah, it's we are very closely working with the ACO right now to make sure that the 2007 schedule gives all the European teams an opportunity to compete at least at Sebring and at Petite, and to be able to send their freight across the ocean in a container rather than in an airplane. That's a big factor for the teams that would like to come and run in the series.
And we have to talk. Well, you talked about Porsche being worried about Acura and wonder what you wish for. It's going to be tough for anybody to top what Porsche did at Mid-Ohio. I mean, that Penske Porsche program, what a race.
Yeah, after a couple of tough outings, with Sebring and Houston behind them, I think they showed the true colors here. And what an incredible combination Penske and Porsche is together. And I don't know that we want to see an LMP2 winning overall on a regular basis, but that was quite a stellar performance.
And of course, if you've got the Acura coming in next year with even a couple of teams, and you've got Lexus there, and of course you've got Porsche now, and Audi with the diesel. What about Peugeot? Do you think they're likely to come across with the diesel eventually?
That's a good question. The fact that they currently at least don't sell road cars in North America is a bit of a factor, but a month or so ago, I was told by the general manager at Sebring that they'd had inquiries from Peugeot looking for hotel rooms and asking about track testing. And I wouldn't count them out for Sebring, but right now, very much unconfirmed.
We should say also that although it's very similar, it's not a mirror image. American Le Mans Series has some different rules about them governing the United States faction of this.
Yeah, it's in the early years, it literally was a mirror image. And the reality is the rules and regulations that apply to a single 24-hour event don't always translate perfectly over into a 10-race series across 8 months on the calendar and across North America. So thankfully, over time, our relationship, and I think the trust that the ACO has put in both the American Le Mans Series and IMSA, our sanctioning body, now gives us a certain amount of autonomy to be able to still maintain the respect of that Le Mans connection, but also put some rules in place that make sense for a 10-race series.
And most of these rules are really rules to the car itself, adaptation of different things that, you could run the car over the United States and you can run it over here. As we see one of the Spykers in trouble, the 85.
Well, we've been watching that car. It had been limping around and stopping and starting and stopping. But on the other side of the coin, we just saw, if you were watching the graphic there, the 86, the team car, is leading in the LMGT2 category right now, which is just a remarkable development for this program.
And they sell these cars in the United States, David.
Well, they've made it back. I thought we'd probably seen the last of that. He was stuck down on the straight. He was in one of the chicanes on the main straight. That's, 4 miles from here, but they've got it back.
It must be like an electrical problem of some sort or something, because they got it pop started. You saw the marshals there lending a hand. Now it's running on its own.
And of course, the Spyker has the Audi A8 V8 engine in there. The engine you'd find in the Audi A8, obviously tuned up a bit, but still all a good, reliable motor for these guys to use.
Yep, it's going to go in the garage. You see them putting the little casters under it, which always means they're taking it back and out of the harm's way to do some major work.
Watching here now again on the world feed, the number 76. That was a car that qualified on pole, then had the little development with the chassis, and they were allowed to run but start at the back, and they're fighting their way back into things as well. As a matter of fact, up to second in the category right now. But Scott, one of the things we were chatting a little bit about the development with Peugeot. Well, of course, they made a big announcement here, and what we want to do is take you back to that as Andrew Marriott talked to the president of Peugeot, one of the top gentlemen there, about the unveiling and the future of this potentially really strong program.
We thought that winning with a diesel engine at Le Mans was a very great challenge for us.
You took this decision, I believe, before Audi made their announcement. You were both thinking in the same direction.
Yes, but what is important for us when we enter a new challenge is to win. But to win against competitors, great ones. And I think that Audi is a great competitor because they won Le Mans several times. We have to be clear. We don't think that we will be able to win in 2007. It's 2008 that is the year for us to win Le Mans with the diesel engine.
So that was the announcement, and the interesting thing is the question is going to be that they kind of skirted, from what I understand, to be honest, is what's the car going to look like? A lot of engine, and there are rumors it may be a coupe, and we're hearing rumors that ACO may decide the future of Le Mans might be coupe. and wondering what that might translate to for the American Le Mans Series.
Yeah, the ACO held their annual press conference yesterday, and they did show a graphic or an illustration of what would potentially be a 2010 LMP1, and that illustration was a closed-top car, or a coupe, as you say. And right now, I think it's a discussion that's taking place. They're inquiring with a lot of manufacturers. They inquired with us this week for our feedback. You know, right now it's a choice, and the rules, the way they're written, seem to favor the open-top version. But you know, I love the look of a closed-top prototype, and we'd love to see them run, and have to see what manufacturers do in embracing the new plans for, you know, what's important now is stability through 2009 with new rules to come in 2010.
But the thing about an open car is that you do get even with the modern cars where the car comes well up the side and the safety is such that the driver's in a much more of a cocoon than he ever used to be. There's just something about those open cars to watch them. You know, you never quite, I mean, look at this now. You have no idea who's really in that car.
Right.
I mean, swoopy. Obviously, the old IMSA GTP prototypes, you know, back 10, 15 years were terrific.
Yeah, when they were running the coupes in IMSA, they didn't seem to have a real problem with crowd caring about the identification factor. They just loved the look of those cars. So that's the deal. All right, Scott, we want to say thanks very much. Appreciate you stopping by and, as always, giving us the information. We hope the rest of your weekend is just fun. Go out and enjoy some great car racing and have a good time.
Thanks, Greg. We're looking forward to getting back to the States and back to the American Le Mans Series.
That's right. 2 weeks after this race, folks. It's the American Le Mans at Lime Rock. So, and there is the Pescarolo Sport pit area, and they are sitting, watching, and hoping. But it is the Audis right now that are in control here at the 74th Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Welcome back to Le Mans, everybody, and if you're just joining us, here's what happened in the first hour at the start. The two Audis with, what, 1,200 Newton-pounds of torque launched into the lead. The Pescarolos could do nothing about it. Shortly thereafter, number 69, and that is Babini in the Aston Martin, a huge shunt over at the exit of the Porsche curves, and it was probably caused as the 007 Aston came across some curves, ripped off the oil pan, and dumped a bunch of oil. Meanwhile, the Audis, also a very close moment as the pill beam spun right in front of the second-place car. In the second hour, things went awry for the number 63 Corvette. Ride and enjoy this moment, although they didn't. Johnny O'Connell said it just got away from him. They weren't sure why. The left rear corner damaged, and we've seen more problems with that. The number 50 Ferrari 550 Maranello, you see the right rear tire has gone down comprehensively. And then in the third hour, another close call for the Audi. This time, Dindo Capello, who put it on pole, tried to get down underneath the Vinny car, wasn't confident apparently. And then he came into the pits, and he was obviously upset about something. Went back out, however, and then one of the more spectacular moments of the race is the Velter Racing Peugeot went airborne and then turned into a shovel and then spun.
Boy, it sure did, didn't it? It was oil, and he had just balked one of the leading Audis terribly badly on the lap before, so I suspect the driver in that car is somewhat inexperienced.
The Valvoline reset, you can take a look at the stats there, and we also have a driver change in the number 7 second place car. Capello stepping out, and Tom Christensen, who I think quickly is just becoming known as TK, is getting behind the wheel. What a remarkable story he sees, and you see on his helmet right there, that's his autograph, Tom K, and a smiley face.
Now, here's the deal. This is only 10 laps after the last time they stopped. We know they can run 15. So that's a little bit premature.
I didn't hear wheel spin then, did I?
Don't say it.
Oh my gosh.
Three-minute
Instant dismissal.
3-minute penalty if you spin your tires. Oh,
how do you not chirp a diesel with that much torque? I just don't understand. Yeah. I wonder if this is related at all to the problems that Brian Till was talking about with that little windscreen that wraps around. It dislodged, it apparently mounts down into the electronic dash area, and that's been having some problems, and maybe they needed to come in and get Christensen in the car and make that change.
Well, what Brian was telling us is that windscreen, you know, it got hit by a piece of rubber. Now that windscreen, it takes and deflects the air up and above the driver's helmet and head area. Well, that being said, it's separated there, and it's causing huge buffeting, and it's starting to tear away at the dashboard itself. To fix it, Brian thinks they'd have to take the complete dash out, which is not, I can tell you, not an easy thing to do.
Well, it was all electronics.
Yeah,
which, I mean,
all the
It could be half an
electronics.
hour's job, that.
Plus, I think you got to take the center bodywork up to get at it. But with only 10 laps on that fuel run, there's something going on there.
Something
You see our-
stirring.
Saw that graphic, the development graphic, the GT2 leaders and the 76 car, which had qualified on pole and then went to the back because of the work on the car and started last, is back in the lead of the GT2 ranks at this stage. And as we watch Marco Werner working his way around, ooh, and a little bit loose there, we understand Brian Till may, oh, wait a minute, Brian, we have a fairly big shunt out on the track.
Don't know what that
Bodywork
is.
off the car.
Is that the radical? I can't really say that it is. It's just no body left on the front. And we got fire and an explosion.
No, he's trying to drive it.
I don't think he realizes how badly it's damaged,
He's
obviously.
trying to do something
let's
with
check
it.
it out.
Oh, it's one of the Belmondo cars, isn't
Oh,
it?
the right rear tire exploded. That's a tire failure.
Jeepers creepers.
Catastrophic tire failure. Right rear.
Woo.
What a wild ride this one is.
And that is down by...
And it is on
there's
fire. I
the
thought
grass
so.
on fire because they've had no rain here except Wednesday night for weeks. Boy, that was a bad one. That was going down from Mulsanne towards Indianapolis, I believe.
That's Jan Claret, one of the drivers in the Belmondo entry. That's a Megachrome Ford.
Wow.
Badged Ford, I should say.
And nothing that driver could do. That was a right rear explosion. You saw the bodywork get ripped off, and then once that's gone, you're just a passenger, David.
That's exactly where we saw the Dumbreck car fly off just in 1999, just about 300 or 400 yards. He's just about to go into the start of the Indianapolis complex, but that was an incredibly comprehensive departure from the race.
Well, and the first car through all that mess was Christensen. Just saw him duck through the turn, and there were marshals all over the track trying to pick debris up.
Well, of
I
course,
wonder if this may bring out the safety car.
These cars are made of carbon fiber and, of course, Kevlar. And when they're very, very strong, but they don't have much flex to them. And when they break into shards. And that's what can be dangerous. Have shards of that stuff lying all over the track. It really needs cleaning up a bit before they should have a safety car, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
where it is anyway, they're bound to have a safety car.
Well, no matter how well a tire is made, it could get cut down by, as you said, those shards. So we'll see what happens here. Meanwhile, let's quickly get back down to Brian Till, who has caught up with Max Papis.
Well, Max Papis just got out of the 63 car, and oddly enough, Max, when you got out, you're alone here in the garage.
Absolutely. I want to say hi to my family at home, Tati, all my dogs, and Marco. He's coming in 4 weeks. I miss you very much, guys. You know, we have, on the racing side, we had definitely a steep beginning of the race. Unfortunately, Johnny, lost the car, and we don't really know why, and we had to use a repair. The car is not really as good as we want it to be. The Corvette is running a little bit, with the steering wheel tilt to the left in the braking zone. The car is pulling right and left a little bit. It's definitely tough, but we still have many hours to go, and the crew guys here are fantastic. Dan Binks is #1. He's going to fix my car, so I'm going to go really fast at the end of the race.
Talk about fixing the cars. Check this out. An old stock car trick is to take this duct tape, tape pieces together and make a big patch. That's what we thought they were doing, but indeed, this is what they're putting on the car. And actually, one of the guys, Ross Jeffrey, on the 64 car, invented this stuff. And what it is a piece of laminate, which several millimeters thick, sticky as crazy, guys, and it holds the car back together.
All right, Brian, we're going to jump in here. Christensen, the #7, the car going into the garage. Now, we saw he was the first car. 1, he stopped short, only 10 laps. 2, he came through that accident scene, and then they were.
There's, you see the marks on the nose there where that rubber hit it. I'm sure that he's counting on there being a safety car now.
Well, they've got the engine cover off, so this is not addressing the situation where the rubber hit. This is a different problem altogether. They're working at the back of the car.
Now, this is the car that in the morning warm-up had all the problems with the gearbox, had the change. They thought it was half shaft. It turned out to be gearbox, a lot of smoke, and they went for the change. Now, Christensen stays on board.
This is where you want a high-resolution camera on the roof that can go right over the heads of all those people.
Now, remember at the beginning of the show, I said that Audi said they were going to run a really hard pace because they didn't think they'd make it through this race without having to fix some of these problems.
I think that's what they are doing. I think they're doing the dashboard, see? The guy's attacking the dashboard. But I'm amazed that there is no safety car out.
I am too. And
I can't believe it.
And it would make sense, wouldn't it, Dorsey, that they'd have to get the rear body work off because some of the electronic management would probably be back there for the dash.
Well, I don't know what they're doing with no safety car, because that car that's out there on the circuit is not going to go anywhere.
It's one of the worst places on the track. It's at the fastest part of the track, down at the bottom of the hill there, braking for the corner.
Quite dangerous right there, all that debris on the racetrack.
Very dangerous.
Let's see if we can check in with Brian Till, who's now made his way down to the Audi pit. Brian?
Well, Greg, I'm too short for this. I can't see over all these guys, but what I can see is there is a new dash laying on the left side of the 7 car, so they will be making that dash repair. And although you speculate there will be some wiring in the back that they'd have to change, I don't think that that's correct. It should just be plug and play. So what it should be is the dash should just unplug and plug another one in. Now, obviously, there are going to be some mounting bolts. These guys working feverishly in the back of that diesel engine. Of course, I can't see it from where I am, but they are definitely working on something in the back, and I can't believe it would be connected to the dash.
No, I don't think so either, Brian. I think there's 2 separate problems there that you're going to have to deal with. And I'm sure that the dash situation is something that you wouldn't even contemplate having go wrong, a piece of rubber come up and hit that.
Well, and I also think that I'm absolutely convinced that Tom Christensen came in then because he was dead sure there'd be a safety car.
Yeah, I'm sure of that, too. If I was in the car, I would certainly say, having gone through that crash site, that there's going to be a full course car.
Yeah,
and
he was the first one through there. On the scene, you're going to be saying, oh, my God, you know, this could take half an hour to clear up.
Just another one of those interesting things about endurance racing, and now you know, don't mount a windscreen onto an electronic dash unit. I mean, who would think, you know, exactly that would happen?
We saw the dome there, just a brief picture of the dome with Stefan Johansson at the wheel. Here's the other Courage, obviously having a good look around that.
Yeah, the Belmondo entry. This is the team car to the one that had the huge tire.
Because we're assuming the tire went and the suspension didn't collapse.
Yeah, that's true indeed. Well, let's go back and take a look at that incident. Here it is.
Right rear. Look at the right rear. There goes the tire. Huge explosion. Blows the bodywork off. Shrapnels. And this is where the crash just starts. There's trouble here because we start bouncing off the guardrail. Almost goes upside down.
There is so much junk and clag and bits of beast on the track. I can't believe there's no safety car.
Well, we're all a little bit dumbfounded by that. We'll step away for a moment, and we'll be back to sort everything out. Wednesday on Speed, unique whips, tricks out your TV. Tune in as Will Castro and his crew handle the rides of today's hottest celebrities. Because whether you're East Coast or West, a car is just a car until it's unique. Unique whips, Wednesday night at 10 Eastern, 9 Pacific on Speed. Welcome back to the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans, the Circuit de la Sarthe here in Le Mans, France. Great to have everybody with us. A good look there at the number 16 Pescarolo Sport. Judd-powered sports car in the hands of Eric Comas right now, running second overall behind the number 8 Audi of Marco Werner. The Audi R10 TDI. Sebastian Loeb in the team Pescarolo entry sits third. And, of course, the big development recently has been the Audi of Christensen going into the garage for some work. They are still working on the front of the car, but more work unfolding at the back, Dorsey.
Yeah, you see the mechanic back there ratcheting away. This little dashboard thing is inconvenience. That's not the problem. Problem's back here in the back, and it's something major.
Okay, Brian, what are you hearing down there?
Well, the telemetry guys was showing them that they had some fuel pressure issues. The engine wasn't stumbling, it was running fine, but they wanted to get it taken care of. You know, telemetry is a great thing, but what it means is they're going to have to change a lot of components in the back of that engine. It looked like they were definitely changing the diesel injectors in the back, or probably some other fuel-related electronics as well.
I saw the fuel rail, if you will, or the fuel lines that go to the individual injectors laying up on the fender work. So certainly I think you're right, Brian. They're probably putting fuel injectors in there and replacing those lines.
Well, we know the one thing they're not changing is the plugs.
Look at all the debris at this crash site, and they haven't gone to
no, that's not the crash site. That's on the main straight.
That's those pieces of rubber then that was hitting on the Audi from before.
And gentlemen, I don't want to be a naysayer here, but I think we have just seen a huge development, certainly in terms of Tom Christensen extending his streak of consecutive wins and adding to his overall win tally here, because this has just gone from being a job up front to a job of catch-up, and that is not always well done.
He's dropping like a stone. He's three laps down already and still in the garage.
Well, he will be. Here's the crash site. I must say, it looks pretty clean. I'm not quite sure where the wrecked car is. They must have hoiked it over the guardrail with a crane or something. They're just out of sight down to the Indianapolis corner.
Well, there are a lot of marshals out picking stuff up, but one, I wouldn't have wanted to have been one of them with cars coming streaming through that section of track. And how well could they have cleaned it without proper time and the like? But I guess the officials have deemed it to be okay. But at this stage, Continue to watching the action here of the Pescarolos. And we're watching Comas, Loeb, of course, behind him. And let's check in with Chris Neville.
Well, Greg, we should be seeing the Pescarolos coming to pit lane here in the next few laps. Both the 16 and the 17 car. Both running very well. Teams are saying the cars are running fine. It's just we can't keep pace with the Audis. There's nothing we can do at this point in time other than let the clock turn. So these teams just saying, guys, keep it on the racetrack, take it really easy. We still have a lot of racing in front of us, and Audi right now is having problems.
Well, you know, we were all speculating a little bit about what would happen in terms of outright speed when we got here, but maybe some of us forgot the lap that McNish turned in qualifying at Sebring. It kind of had a lot of heads wagging, and we're seeing that kind of pace now. But we have another very special guest here in the booth. But Mr. Hobbs, I'm going to let you introduce this gentleman and have a chat with him because you've spent some time with him.
Well, we're going to welcome with us Richard Atwood, the first man. Ooh, there goes the Aston Martin 007, having a very traumatic day. That's down at one of the chicanes on the straight. Of course, in our day, Richard, they didn't have those silly chicanes.
No, we didn't have that problem there, so it was just a straight line.
That wasn't a chicane, that was Mulsanne, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the chicanes that are down in Mulsanne. So, yeah, they weren't there then, but that's a long time ago.
Richard, of course, won the first race ever here for Porsche overall, as we watch the 007 have a lurid slide off the road. The driver at the moment is Thomas Enger, who put that car on pole in the GT2, but it's got off to a horrible start, going over the curb earlier on, cracking the oil pan, sump to you and me, chap, and losing all the oil.
Yeah. And that actually happened coming into the pit lane. He had got a call from the crew chief, pit right now, and he was right there, and he cut in there and hold the oil pan. So luckily, he was right in his garage.
Yeah, I think he pulled an oil pipe off. Actually, it wasn't the engine sump; it was an oil line, I think. So it was relatively easy to repair. But if it had been the hole at the bottom of the engine, it would have been more difficult, I think.
Now, Richard, you won this race, as we saw there in 1970, the first guy to win overall in a Porsche, and of course since then they've gone on to win another 15 of them, 16 wins overall. Track's changed a lot since those days. What do you think of the new Dunlop curve and down to Terre Rouge? Terre Rouge has been realigned.
I actually haven't been around the new track, the track as it is now. I only came last year for the first time after 25 years, so I'm not really up to speed with them all. But of course, all the chicanes have been put in to address the speed, which is always a problem here. But they seem to still reach the same terminal speed anyway, so it's just that you're not doing it all the time, I guess.
The one place they haven't changed much is from Mulsanne down to that right-hander before Indianapolis, where you go over those two brows.
Yeah, great corners, aren't they? Yeah.
Great corners, but a bit on the dodgy side, though.
Well, you know, only that they're quick, that they could be dodgy. So if you have a problem there, then it's going to be a big one. So, you know, that's what they've tried to do over the years, is contain the speed.
Well, as a matter of fact, a little bit earlier this weekend, David, you went out to that very spot on the track and did a little bit of looking it over in a bit of a nostalgic sense and taking a look at some of the changes that have and have not occurred in that section of track.
Since the first race here in 1923, this circuit has gone through 12 major revisions. But the one part that seems to have gone slightly unscathed is this: the everyday road from Mulsanne, about 1.5 miles up there, to Arnage, about 1 mile down there. Nothing has been done to this road, hardly at all, and it is now the fastest part of this circuit. The LMP1 car is doing about 215 miles an hour. And as they go over that little hump, just the other side of this apex, that is where in 1999, Peter Dunbreck took that huge flight into the trees on my right. He emerged absolutely unscathed.
Back 5, Mercedes, but it has gone again! Oh, there it is, it's into the trees. Right.
About the only major thing that's happened here, this guardrail, which was added in 1970, has gone from where I'm standing to there. So I guess they got a bit of run up now. There's the apex I was standing on, about 1/4 mile up the road. As you can see, pretty narrow, not a lot of runoff area. But as we arrive here, this right-hander no-name corner before Indianapolis, they have reprofiled this corner. The guardrail used to be right where I'm standing now. It's not as sharp as it was. They got tons of runoff area for the cars because they arrived here around about 220 miles an hour before they brake and turn left into Indianapolis. A real signature corner here at Indianapolis because it is a bank left-hander, hence the name. And right where I was standing there is where that Courage came unglued just a few laps ago.
And our first and third in class are now in, by the way, gentlemen. That is Marco Werner bringing the Audi in, and there will be a driver's change. Looks like Emanuele Pirro will be getting behind the wheel. Also coming in was Eric Comas, bringing the car in as well. So that's the significance right there. And you can see Werner helping get everything buckled up. There he goes. He's plugging in a number of things. And let's get down to Brian Till.
Well, it looks like a routine stop, Greg, but it is not. There's something going on with the 8 as well. Ralph Yogner, the team manager, has another steering wheel in his hand. He's standing back in the garage holding the steering wheel. And there's some speculation. There's been some arguing actually going on amongst his team as to what it is they're going to do. I don't know if it's a paddle shift problem or some type of electronic readout on this dash, but all is not well. He'll take it back on track, but there are some problems with the number 8 Audi.
Well, that steering wheel controls absolutely everything. You shift with it. It tells you when to shift. It tells you everything that's going on in the car. You talk to your mechanics and back to the pit lane with the steering wheel buttons. Without that steering wheel, you're in dire strait.
The modern steering wheel on these cars, from these cars to Formula One, is the most intricate and amazing piece of kit you could ever come across. Costs somewhere in the region of $50,000 each. So you don't want to go losing your steering wheel, which while Formula One, if you have any sort of retirement, you're supposed to put the steering wheel back on the car.
So lots of developments happening at the very front end of things. There is your leader in the GT1 division. And now we are on board with the team car, number 63, Ron Fellows. And here is a look at our top 5 overall. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, and great to have you with us here. And we have a very interesting development unfolding right here. You are watching the 009 Aston Martin as it is coming after the 64 Corvette in a battle for position, and also the number 7 Audi. Tom Christensen behind the wheel, making its way out of the pits now. He has been in that pit stall over 20 minutes, Brian.
Placed extensive parts on the back of that TDI. That V10 diesel is back underway, and it's funny, they started up in the garage a moment ago and you could not hear it. It's so quiet. So basically they've got a system that they plug into the exhaust that exhausts all the gases out of the back of the garage. That it was so quiet, standing out in front, we couldn't even hear it running.
All right, thanks very much. Well, obviously Tom Christensen has an awful lot of work to do, as does the entirety of the driving quartet in that team. So that's going to be something we'll be following here, as of course we watch that battle on and off as the battle for GT1 starting to build. But also we've been doing a fair amount of chatting about things nostalgic, and also about the drivers of a former era. And with one here in the booth, we thought we'd maybe take a moment and step back and look at another great piece of track. Le Mans. Perhaps the 2 most evocative words one can utter in the world of international racing. It is certainly a place of great history, but also one of those exceptional venues where life can evolve into legend. For many, those legends revolve around the amazing cars that have become inexorably linked to this greatest of races. But even those legends would have never been born without the remarkable souls that brought those machines to life. And to me, there are no more compelling stories in motorsport than those of the drivers, les pilotes, who have achieved to some the unthinkable, to many the incredible, and to most the truly heroic. A classic example would be one of the greatest eras in terms of machinery to ever race at this legendary circuit, that of the fearsome Porsche 917 and Ferrari 512s. But those cars would have been simply sculpture with promise were it not for incredibly talented and immensely brave drivers willing to get behind the wheel and drive them at 240 plus miles an hour down the Mulsanne, through the kink, over the hump, or to me, even more spectacular, continue straight on where now the Porsche curves bend to the right, over this bridge at 200 miles an hour, unsettling the car, then setting up while the car is not quite right through a series of very swoopy curves through incredibly tight, narrow public country lane, eventually continuing on and exiting where that white wall is, a legendary part of the track forever memorialized in Steve McQueen's great movie Le Mans, and only a year after that, considered so diabolical it was eliminated as part of the track, the now legendary Maison Blanche. And once
Maison
again.
Blanche was just behind that Ferris wheel. If you went the straight here, arrived at this point from Maison Blanche, which is about 3/4 of a mile down, just about where that little white house is to the left of the Ferris wheel. And that was Maison Blanche in the old days. And one of the guys that went through there was you, Richard, in one of those 917s.
Yeah, I did. It was coming up from Arnage, which is a slow corner that starts about a mile and a half before. You just approach that at flat-out speed, so probably doing around 200 and a bit, I would think. Maybe down a gear, and it was taken at about 160 miles an hour. And it was very, very high banking. There was no escape there. And if you went off, you just bounced off the bank and back into the middle of the track again. And I did have an incident there with, back in the early 60s it was, with Carlo Abate was in a Ferrari, and he lost the whole thing in front of me. And I was trying to decide which side to go past him, because he was actually slowing quicker than I was. And I had to decide which way to go. Unfortunately, I chose the right side.
Well, right where old Greg was standing there, right where that ditch was there, to the ditch, and then just a sort of barbed wire fence to keep the animals off the track.
Well, it was pretty hostile territory, and in the film Le Mans with the Steve McQueen thing, David Piper did actually go off just before Maison Blanche, I think, and there was a bit of a guardrail there, but it was mounted into soggy mud. It just folded down, and the barrier might as well not have been there.
Yeah, those barriers were not the best things in those days, but of course the first year of the barriers was when poor old Joe Bonnier was killed on the approach where I did my little piece there a few minutes ago. In fact, right here, he was killed when he went over the guardrail into the trees, because the guardrail then laid down on him and launched him like a model car.
Well, my first ever visit to Le Mans was when we went and drove the track, and then the Porsche curves took off, and I realized where we were going, and that little tunnel of trees and road, and to think about you guys going in there at 200 miles an hour, it just that really made the hair stand up, and gave just a sense that I'd never had of what an amazing place this was, and what amazing cars those were, and what amazing drivers you were to be willing to do that. So thank you so much, Richard. Really appreciate you coming up here. It's it's been a real treat.
Pleasure to be on your channel.
All right, well, I hope you get to go out and enjoy a lot more good racing here, and we certainly should have more to come. The sun's starting to set here at the Circuit de la Sarthe. Don't go anywhere. Speed's coverage of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans is presented by Michelin, a better way forward. By the all-new 2007 Lexus ES350, the car that asks, is it possible to engineer desire? And by Progressive Direct. Call 1-800-PROGRESSIVE or visit progressive.com for a free quote. And we want to show you a little bit of a race recap. What's unfolded at the start, the two Audis from the front row leapt into the lead. The Pescarolo Judds could do nothing with them and simply followed them into the first turn. Then two cars with expectations had big moments early. First, the 007 Aston Martin broke an oil pump or an oil pan or an oil fitting, and also had an off just recently. Then two problems. One for the Corvette. Watch this. Johnny O'Connell gets it wrong. Damage to the left rear corner. Spent a little bit of time in the pits. Then for the Audis, close call here. Watch this as the number 20 Pilbeam splits them as it spins. And then Dindo Capello on a charge after he'd taken over from Allan McNish, trying to get underneath the Binny Motorsports car. Locks it up. It gets crossed up. Manages to save it. Then two spectacular moments. The Velter Racing Peugeot climbing, bounding, flying, grinding over the curbs. Comes to a rest, and then the most spectacular moment thus far, the number 37 Belmondo Racing P2 entry. Tire explodes into the guardrail. Debris, bodywork everywhere, even a bit of a fire. However, everybody was okay. The cars, of course, a bit of another story. So that's a look at some of the moments coming in here. Now we want to show you the class leaders, top three in each of our classes. In the two prototype divisions, in P1, it is the number 8 Audi out front right now in the hands of Emanuele Pirro. Then it is the two Pescarolo Judds sitting second and third. In the P2 division, it is the number 25 RML Ray Malek Limited entry leading over the Radical. Very impressive run here thus far, and also the number 39, which is the Chamberlain entry, which has had some problems, and it is great to see them up in the top three. We go to the GT divisions. It's the 64 CompuWare Corvette out front, but prior to a pit stop recently by the 009, it was getting very close, and then the number 72 Corvette C5 in the hands of Polican Gouzelard and Luc Alphand, who is a legend here in terms of downhill skiing in France, sitting in third. And in GT2, it's been a back-and-forth battle. Currently, it's the number 83 Porsche from Cycle Motorsport that leads it. The 86, and this is a great story, is the Spyker that sits in the second spot. And we've seen a lot of cars working through there at certain points. We've also seen the car that qualified on pole up there as well. Let's check in with Brian Till.
Greg Emanuele Pirio behind the wheel of the 8 car. All is well there. I checked in with Ralph Yutner. He said it's just shift lights on the steering wheel. They can do without them right now. The 7 back underway, but many laps down. So it almost looks like it's last year in reverse. Pescarolo seems to be running fine. Audi seems to have the problems. Chris?
Brian, while we were away, both Pescarolos were in. First, it was the 17 car, and everything was fine with that car. Very quick pit stop. Sebastian Loeb staying in the car. Prior to that, it was the 16 car. Eric Comas bringing that machine to pit lane. Now, the only thing I noticed on that one is they did replace the windscreen. That windscreen was torn up by debris on the racetrack, something that we've seen collecting as this race is going on. Lots of rubber debris out on the racetrack. It was a quick stop for the 16 car. Not as lengthy as the Audi.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. And it has been an interesting and eventful start to a 24-hour endurance race. There's no question of that.
It certainly has, and everybody's been setting some cracking times. The best lap from the Audi of number 8 is a 3:32. The best lap that Christensen's car's done is a 3:33. The Pescarolos are both done a 3:35 and a 3:36, so they're not that far off their qualifying. So these guys are nailing it right from the drop of the flag, and we have seen quite a few instances. The 2 Aston Martin instances pretty hair-raising, and of course Johnny O'Connell, most unlike him, to just go driving off the road like that.
And Dorsey, you predicted some of that pace.
Well, yeah, I tell you what's catching my eye that I don't like seeing is there's this huge amount of rubber that's out on this racetrack, and we're starting to hear now of damage caused by these balls of rubber that are flying up. They can hit the driver in the helmet. They can hit all sorts of things. I think before this night's over, that rubber is going to be a big problem.
And keep in mind, we are very early into this night, and then, of course, a lot of coverage to come. At 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be back with more live coverage of the 74th running of the 24 Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans, and it will be right to the very finish. But coming up next, some more great racing action, live NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series action from Michigan. So we'll take you to there. You're going to enjoy that. But as we said, there's going to be some great racing to unfold yet here at Le Mans. And when we come back at 8 p.m. Eastern, we will take you live right to the finish of this absolutely stellar event. And plus, bring you an extra half hour of coverage and bring you up to date on what unfolded, interviews with winners and champions and the like. So make sure you stay tuned for some NASCAR action for Michigan and come back at 8 o'clock for the rest of this legendary event. We'll see you then.
Tonight on Speed. The greatest automotive endurance race in the world is back. 24 Hours of Le Mans.
Big slip right there.
Unbelievable.
Whoa.
Grueling, intense, unmerciful. Catch all the action this weekend from start to finish as Speed brings you live coverage from the 74th running of this prestigious event. 24 Hours of Le Mans continues tonight only on
supposed to, isn't it?
Yeah, it's how it's supposed to work.
Bill
Thank you very
is
much.
supposed to be doing that, but
Got a pit stop here, and this is the Intersport, Lola, and it looks as though we are getting the driver's change. Clint Field getting in. That's Duncan Dayton, who is hopping out of the car. And, of course, Duncan Dayton's Highcroft racing team, after Le Mans, is going to be back with, I believe, the rest of the season, running a very similar car to this as well at the remainder of the American Le Mans series. But Clint Field now behind the wheel.
Duncan Dayton, a very, very successful historic racer, drives a lot of historic cars, including a lot of Formula One cars, some of which are not that old, and he has now won more Formula One races at Monte Carlo than Ayrton Senna did.
That's a fun stat.
Good driver, old Duncan Dayton.
I've watched him run the 78 Lotus that Mario Andretti took to the World Championship at Road America. And I mean, the guy hustles those cars incredibly well. As you said, he drives Benettons and Ferraris, and actually at Road Atlanta during the Walter Mitty Historics a few years ago, he's driving the I believe it was the Reynard that Jacques Villeneuve won the kart championship with and won Indy that year, and he broke the outright track record at Road Atlanta pre-chicane. So just amazing. Here are some of the American drivers, as a matter of fact, talking about that are here, and as you can see, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, obviously led by Duncan Dayton in the 33 car, with young Clintfield in there. He's only 22 years old. Liz Halliday also driving that car. John Macaluso, Andy Lally, a very accomplished driver. Johnny O'Connell in the Corvette. Chris McAllister, Bill Binney. Terry Borchella, another very, very successful driver. Tracy Cohn, his first time here. Van Overbeck. Patrick Long, a Porsche driver, of course, official factory driver. Gunnar Jeanette, famous father as well. Tom Milner, another famous father. And
Gunnar Jeanette ought to upset you as well, because I was looking at his stat. He's something like 23 years old, and this is his 6th Le Mans. Speed's coverage of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans is brought to you by Porsche. Porsche, there is no substitute. And by Valvoline, test on the track, trusted on the road. Hi, everybody. Great to be with you. There's a look at the Audi pit. Greg Creamer joining David and Dorsey up here in the booth. And a good look there at the number 25 RML Lola.
About time you came to
a very
work.
strong run.
Andy Wallace taking it onto the road.
Yes. Old Andy, who's once again having a very busy season over in the U.S. And great to see him get an opportunity with a top front car here. And apparently this car just made a stop down in pit lane, and Chris Nelby, you got some information on that for us.
That's right, Greg. Andy Wallace had just brought the 25 machine to pit lane, currently leading P2. These are our defending champions from last year. Now, word is that they are having some boost pressure problems with the car. This was just a routine stop. They did pull some data from the car that they're going to take a look at. However, the team is leading. There already are other problems within the P2 category. We've seen the Intersport team have some issues here, so already some attrition in this category. Andy Wallace may have a couple issues in that 25.
Well, that's very interesting, because the problem, as I understand it, with the Intersport car was possible wastegate, is what they're saying. Was they made a fix on the wastegate and that solved it, which could be, again, boost related. And Dorsey, you talked earlier about the stresses that little engine has to go through, and it's boosted immensely.
Yeah,
to get through 24 hours.
Liz Halliday was reporting to us that it was into an overboost situation. What happens, of course, it's regulated. The wastegate regulates how much pressure that the turbocharger can make. And when it goes into overboost, it goes into a fail-safe mode, and that's why it was shutting it down like that. So
it's just unbelievable how young he got going now. At this stage of the race, certainly the Audi's still having things going very well, running 1-2, but in the morning warm-up, Allan McNnish's hand went in the air, and at first people thought maybe they were just bringing him in just to check things over, but not the case. He had a bit of a problem, sent him back out, and even more smoke.
And that is not diesel smoke either. That's gearbox smoke.
Then, in the first hour of the race, right here, watch the number 20 Pillbeam come right across, split the two Audis, and then just about 7 minutes ago, a huge moment here. Watch the lockup. That is Capello. Got away from him, forced the other car right up over the curbing. That was the Vinny Motorsport Zytek. He was able to gather it up, but David, at that point, you noted he lost a lot of time vis-a-vis his margin over Werner.
Well, of course, the thing about those escapades where you leap over the curb, we've already saw what happened to the 007 Aston Martin. Went over the curb and punched a hole in the pan, the oil pan. I mean, anything can happen when you start leaping over the curb sideways like that. So what I said at the top of the show, you need a bit of luck, and you really do have to have a bit of luck. That could have gone horribly wrong there, and that was because he was forcing the pace past a lap car. Quite frankly, the Audi drivers don't need to be forcing no pace.
Now, 13-second lead went down to a 3-second lead, but I see now that he's forcing the pace again because he's back up to almost 5-second lead.
They are throwing down some awfully quick times early. Meanwhile, we understand big developments down in the Panoz pit. Andrew?
Yes, indeed, some very despondent faces down here. The 77 car, Gunnar Jeanette, currently at the wheel, has stopped out on the circuit. The team are still trying to assess what the problem is, but this looks pretty desperate from the boys from Brazelton. So I'll bring you some more news when I've found out.
Thanks, Andrew, and that's very bad news indeed. Of course, starting the season so well with the big win at Sebring, and have struggled a little bit since then, but nonetheless, we're looking for a good run here.
Well, it's down in 38th spot
might have been
already.
I think that could have been it limping along back there. They might have gotten it stopped for a while at one of the Marshall posts, but maybe they've got it limping back toward the pit. I'm not sure that was it, though.
Capello, after that bit of a moment, there's a little wiggle there as well, and that's one of the things that they've been dealing with here, the immense torque that these engines produce, and the traction control, although they may even have the technology for it, it's just tearing. And again, we've seen that before. And earlier in the race, we saw McNish almost go off the track on one of the sections as well. We're expecting him into the pits at this point.
Yeah, WR Peugeot was wandering down the road in a particularly fast pit. That's the rundown from Arnage to the Porsche curves. These cars are doing about 200 miles an hour. And cars at Porsche should, that WR car, Peugeot rather, not WR.
That's one of our prototype
should
cars.
Not be in the way.
It's off the racetrack, and the corner workers from all over the world here doing a great job. They're pulling him back to a safe area and covering themselves with the yellow flag.
I almost wonder, is that the Advan?
It's this. I can't
see
tell.
the number on it. It is. It's the number 13 Advan car, which had qualified 5th. And everybody was anticipating that if that car, that they run the 4-liter Mugen, which is the reliability a little bit suspect there, and certainly in terms of a 24-hour race, but they said if it held together, the driver lineup and the speed it was showing certainly had potential. Here is Capello,
who pitted last on lap 29.
Saw a bit of gravel on that close-up shot there, already getting onto the track there up at the top of the Dunlop curve. That's the sort of thing that can catch you out badly. And of course, if you run over just a few bits of gravel on these tightly packed asphalt surfaces, it can easily cut a tire down.
And by the way, gentlemen, before we see what looks...
Got that fixed, and that's good. Happy birthday, Greg.
Thank you, Doris.
Yes, absolutely. Talking about overboost, back in the late 70s, I was driving that BMW 4-cylinder turbocharged 320 turbocharged, and the wastegate stuck at your racetrack at Braden. And it went like hell down the straight, but only once.
Yeah, I bet it. Then the pistons were all laying around.
Gave 1,000 horsepower for about 15 seconds.
Yeah.
It was great.
Well, that car in upshifts, as I recall when you were driving it, didn't go straight a whole lot in a straight line, because when that turbo lag, when it finally came up on the boost, it was all over the place.
And lots of flames came out the side. It was really good fun to watch.
It's an interesting stat, and I don't know, I'll be honest, the specific numbers, but in that AER, that little 2-liter turbo with the 4 cylinders, they're saying that with the boost they're running, the horsepower per cylinder was pretty much right on that of a Formula 1 V10 engine per cylinder. I mean, just immense power that little thing was making.
It probably is. There is old Andy Wallace, good head-on shot. He comes into the Indianapolis left-hand turn, a slight bank. The old guardrail used to be right up to the edge of the road there, down to Arnage. Always a big crowd down here. The village is just to your left.
Of course, that's a new car.
Normal every day. That's normally crossroads when all that guardrail and that fence at the back is taken down. That's just an ordinary country crossroad.
It's a new team for Andy, but it's not really a new car. I mean, it's the same kind of car that the Dyson team back in the United States runs, and Andy's driven for many years.
Can't think of many people you'd rather have behind the wheel of your car in an endurance race than Andy Wallace.
Well, Andy Wallace ticked me off enormously because I was here in 1988. I think I was working for another TV network, and on the way home in the aeroplane, of course, sitting in front of me was the winner, Andy Wallace, who had just driven in his first Le Mans 24-hour race, which he won. And when I said, boy, you know, that was great, what's it feel like? And I think he said, well, that's what